Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the A.G. Russell Titanium Funny Folder. So first off, though, I want to thank very much my Patreon patrons. They have made it possible for me to go to a show like Blade and come home and just place an order with absolutely no concern. And that allows me to check quality control, and it allows me to just pick things up free and clear. Thank you so much for that, patrons. You've given me a great gift. Well, you keep giving me that. That's great. Next thing, how does this thing work? What is this thing even? So it is a funny folder, and indeed it is kind of funny. Check this out. Right now it is in its closed state, as you can probably see. There are no sharp edges. It's perfectly safe. Well, okay, there are no cut you sharp edges. But anyways, then what you do is you fling this guy around, and that then allows this little piece to rotate out of the way, exposing the blade. And now at this point, you have a knife that is effectively locked open because it can't go forward or backwards. It can't go like this kind of thing because this is on a single axis that's going through here. And it can't go side to side because of this little piece back here. And so this is effectively locked open. That's kind of cool, actually. It's a neat idea, and it's a different approach. And so that's how this little guy works. Next thing, let's do a size comparison. This is actually a pretty small knife. Here it is against the Ontario Rat #2 and your Spyderco Delica. As you can see here, yeah, not too big. In terms of actual sharpened blade length, we are still a good ways smaller than the Delica. Here it is against the Spyderco PM2. There you go. Here it is against another A.G. Russell knife, the little lightning bug guy. And so you can see here, blade length-wise, we're very similar, but a little bit different. So there is that. And then finally, let's do a couple of other size comparisons against other smaller knives. Here it is against the Spyderco Rhodey. And what we can see here is sharpened blade length is a bit longer on the not the lightning bug, the funny folder here. The Spyderco Dragonfly, that equivalent blade length, but sharpened length, that is. And then here it is against the Spyderco Man Bug. And so, yeah, absolutely 100%. It's a small little folder. And then finally, let's go ahead and this is going to be a quick review because at some level it's a weird little thing, but it's weird enough that I can say what I need to say pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and jump into the good and the not so good about this little guy right here. So on the good side, to start with, it is relatively compact and light. I mean, seriously, we are coming in here in terms of your overall length. The entire affair is under 3 inches. The overall thickness of it has got to be, less than a 1/4 inch. There's no clip or anything on there, but it's a relatively small thing. And the blade length itself, just for legal reasons to keep in mind, depending on how you want to measure, is like 2 1/4 inches or something like that. It's also quite lightweight. If we put this guy on the scale here, we're coming in less than an ounce. So we're well under an ounce an inch on this guy. So it is a very compact and light knife. That's a beautiful thing. Next thing, the blade on it is a very nice little blade. It is a VG10 blade, which is a steel that is fine for everyday carry, especially at $50. I can live with it there. And it strops right up nicely, easy to sharpen, whatever. But it is a relatively thin blade stock on it. Not, the thinnest thing ever, but it comes down to a relatively thin edge. Not the thinnest edge ever, but it works. And you know what? It's a nice little Warncliffe style blade. There's maybe a little bit of belly to it, but it's great for these kinds of utility cuts like a lot of people do on a regular basis. Opening boxes and envelopes, this is going to excel, so that's a beautiful thing. Next thing, this guy is very packable. What I mean by that is that this is very, very easy to throw into something. If you have like an Altoids tin that you carry a bunch of stuff in, or I happen to, so I use that weird example, but still, if you have something like that, this is very easy to just kind of slip in there. And that way you've got a little knife that'll be enough for some situations and, a good little backup piece. In case you, I don't know, you need to do some cutting on a hard surface or something like that, whatever. This is a reasonable little choice here. And the thing is, because of the way it's designed, you have no worries about it accidentally cutting anything or, frankly, accidentally coming open. It is actually surprisingly safe, and by the way, this is a nice little choice for a first aid kit as well. Maybe a little pricey for that, but nevertheless, that it's good for those kinds of situations where you stash it away. But part of the reason it's very good for being stashed away is that it is surprisingly safe. I don't mean to say that I expected them to sell something unsafe, but what I mean by that is that initially, when I first, saw this and handled it at Blade, I was a little bit like, about this because honestly it feels like it should be able to pop loose and then come open relatively easily. But not only is there a little bit of friction on the top here that allows this to stop here, so right now in this state I can't actually make it flop out of there. You have to kind of give it a little bit of a push. There's a bit of a detent to come open. But you may be thinking, okay, well, sure, but what happens once it starts to come open? Then it's going to be easy to cut yourself. Well, the thing is, watch, what I need to do in order for this blade to become exposed, the blade is facing down this way, is basically pull this out of the way. And so you can see here that at this degree of openness, the very, very edge of the blade is still a little bit away from the edge of the metal. As you continue to open, and there's some geometry involved here, only now has the blade started to actually become available. And then as you kind of keep going, then eventually it comes to a point where the blade can fully deploy. But the thing is, throughout most of its openness range, like for instance, if this comes accidentally open someplace, how likely is it to accidentally come open this far? Probably pretty unlikely. So this is something I would actually feel comfortable carrying, and I did carry in like the coin pocket in my jeans, or the watch pocket, or whatever you want to call it. I think it would work very, very well there, and you don't need a slip or anything like that because it can't really come open to an extent that it's dangerous. It's just a little piece of metal there. And so I think this is actually kind of cool. If you keep it, rattling around in the depths of a pocket, then you have the option to maybe get that. But for the most part, this is actually pretty safe. And so that was pretty impressive to me. I think it's a nice, smart little design here. And, it's a simple thing. But whatever it is, it seems to work pretty well. So, yeah, there you go. And then finally on the good side, this is a very unintimidating knife. What I mean by that is that there are knives out there in the world that are maybe a little bit scary to people. This, for instance, is the Spyderco Respect Bowie. This is a big, scary knife to a lot of people. It's a beautiful knife, but it's big and scary to a bunch of folks. This guy is not quite so much. If you were to take this guy out in the joke is always, you want to cut off a thread in a coffee shop from your shirt. This is a knife that you could very easily do that with, and most people would look at it and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. What is it? Rather than, oh my God, weapon! No matter how scared the person you're dealing with is, this probably won't register as much more than a novelty to them. So I think in that domain, it's going to be a very nice choice in a bunch of situations. I can see people carrying this as a backup knife in case they're around somebody who's particularly scared. They can pull this out instead. So I think those are the good things here. It is a very unintimidating knife, which is a good thing in some situations. It is quite safe, just by the virtue of how it's designed here. It is very packable, so it's very easy to pack away, throw into something, etc. It is a solid blade, and it is compact and very light. On the bad side, it is $50. Now, look, $50, okay, sure. It's kind of right on the edge. It's titanium, it's very lightweight, it's VG10, it's fine, but it's also not like, oh my God, value. This is mostly what I mean by that price being, is that this is a knife I would like to buy a bunch of and just stash in places, so to speak. Put it in the first aid kit. Put one in the desk drawer. Put one in, and at $50 a pop, that's getting to be a little bit much. And so, the price is fine. It's a little higher than maybe I'd like it to see. Maybe even a stainless steel one of these, if they could get it substantially cheaper, that could be cool. But anyways, there you go. Next thing, I would like to see you in this orientation right now. I'm going to flip this over a few times. Which side has the edge? There were two directions I could open this knife in. I could open it with this up or this down. Right now, I have no indication which side has the edge. If there were even the slightest little notch or mark or something like that that showed me which direction the edge was in, that would mean it would be much easier for me to pop this guy open and then know which direction the edge was in. I'd like for there to be some indication of which side is edge up, edge down when the knife is closed. You could add that yourself after the market, so to speak. Put a little hacksaw, get that. But whatever, it's just a thing. I'd like to see it done. Next thing, there is no disassembly possible. Then again, it is a very simple knife. I mean, you could, in theory, take out this screw, and that would get you access to everything but this little area. But whatever. Not a big deal. That's more nitpicking than anything. Next thing, unfortunately, this is a very slow knife to deploy. If I take this out, even with a little bit of skill, there's still some manipulation here, and this is a two-hand-only knife as well. I mean, it's very possible that there is somebody out there, and particularly if you're running these things relatively soft and you've worn it a fair amount, that you could get this guy open with just one hand. But for me, the majority of times, it requires not only two hands, but also you need to look at it. Like, in my experience, I've needed to stare at this thing as I am opening it in order to make sure that I am, A, not going to stab myself, and B, doing everything properly. So this is not one of those knives that is, just, it's open. It's a very, very different experience in that way. Again, that can contribute some to the unintimidating nature of it, but still, that's definitely a thing. This might also be legally questionable in some domains because it is I don't know if this locks or not. I mean, technically, I think it does lock, but it may not lock according to some standards. You're going to want to contact a lawyer before you interpret this as being any kind of particular knife, because it's kind of unusual. It's outside of the realm. Then, next thing, there is considerable play in both directions when you are using this guy. Not only is there play kind of on this domain here, and part of that is due to the shift in this area over here, but there's also a little bit of vertical play as well. It's clear that it's not manufactured to crazy tight tolerances, and as a result, you're going to feel that. It's not the most confidence-inspiring thing in hand ever. Then finally, on the bad side, ergonomically speaking, not a win. You definitely have sharp edges on all of these little corners here, all these corners here. I mean, they've done a little bit of chamfering, but if I were keeping this in the long term, I would be hitting all of this with a file and trying to knock some of these edges down, both for easy carry and frankly just for better ergonomics in the hand. That these little corners as you're gripping up here, not a beautiful thing. So I'm definitely not a big fan of the sharp edges everywhere, and those to me are the bad things. The sharp edges, there's considerable play in the blade when it's open. It is a two-hand only. You kind of have to be looking at it and it's relatively slow to deploy knife. There is no disassembly available, although it's not a really bad problem. I'd like to see some indication of which side is the edge, and it's a little bit more expensive than I'd like in a knife that really feels like it's designed to be stuck in places, so to speak. On the final conclusion front, look, this isn't really an EDC blade. I mean, maybe for some people it could be, but I think for the majority of people, this is not going to be the knife that they're going to carry. You know, on their website, they talk a big game about this being a gentleman's folder. I mean, maybe, I guess, keep it in your briefcase or something. It's kind of sure, okay. And, that's why I wanted to feature it, because I think there will be a subset of people for whom this is going to be a cool little solution. They might not have known it otherwise. But in terms of just like a practical everyday carry knife, there's no clip. It's two-hand only. There's a lot of play, poor ergos, and it's just slow to get to. I mean, generally speaking, on days when I was carrying this guy, it was a little bit of a struggle to grab this relative to the other thing in my pocket, because the other thing would almost universally, no matter what it was, be easier and quicker to get open. Just like, oh, boom, easy. There's another A.G. Russell right here. So, for me, I think it's going to be a little bit of a weird choice. But it really is a weird choice. It's a funny folder. That's the point of it. It's someplace in this weird little novelty pack knife thing. I mean, I think it is a fine knife to keep in a pocket somewhere in your backpack or something like that, in a first aid kit, in your little Altoids tin, whatever. It's got enough blade to do something small, probably not enough blade to send people diving under tables in a coffee shop. I mean, look, it's a fine thing, 100%. Recommendation-wise, I don't know. I mean, this might make sense for you. It might not. You might have a use. You might not. But either way, it's a thing. So now you know that it's a thing. And I appreciate that they're making this thing, because it's a weird thing, and we need more things in the world. So anyways, there you go. I hope this has been interesting to you, that you found this review of this folder funny, or at the very least you found it to be a thing, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.